Welcome to TradeTheMBA.com. This is John. This report is for the 12th of June, birthday of my dearly departed Amy. And at this particular point, a little soft period for the market here as we see the short-term buyers just completely faded on this. And so that's really caused a lot of the general softness, not to mention the fact that we've had a little bit of a rise in shorts. Not much, just enough to parallel the red DOC here. Is started to flatten out just a fraction the other day. And so that, but we still ended up with a higher high, but also a lower low. And finished right in the middle of that range. I would expect that we're probably going to have a little bit more fits back there as we really have to see the shakeout continue its move. Otherwise, we're going to get our expected pullback before any additional move higher. We're still, though, when you look at the overall range, relatively close to the highs that we've been at. So for all the doom and gloom that you've been hearing, not so much. The difference is, though, the NASDAQ certainly not on par with the same relative. But then again, it made a higher high in general comparative to the S&P. So from a relative stance, it's at a peak right here that's relative to the previous one. So we're not too concerned about that. The Euro bounce has really been the huge support for the markets here, and it's been driving it nicely higher because it really does add to its power that the EU is not collapsing, though not a whole lot has changed for the EU. It's just there's no new bad news, so that's enough for a stabilization effect. And here we go, gold potentially moving towards that softer short, but you know, here you've got steel complete reset all the way down below, which is the equivalent of it coming from above, which is why you're seeing some of that softness. But as soon as that spikes back above, we should get the next run up of gold. So this is going to fill some positive extremes. Filled all the way to there. Not sure that we'll get all the way to that level, but we'll go from there. We'll see what happens. And this is a beautiful one. This was that 50K run. So all the way from here, 27.54, and sold it out at 28.92, and that's all it takes to follow that. If we look at the performance report, bingo, new equity highs. So that's pretty nice there from that standpoint, and still not great from a percent profitability, but I'm working on making those adjustments. I had to redo a couple of the language issues that I was contemplating, but the adjusted one that I'm working with now will certainly move up, the 50%, which will skyrocket that and reduce the number of loss factors, and that really makes a huge difference when that happens. It's been just a phenomenal year for it so far this year. It's just fantastic. It's been catching these bottoms right there, reducing the number of failed entry setups, which that's always the key, and it's just able to follow that trend all the way through. Is this the end of the move up? We're getting a full reset here of the DOC red without much dip. Maybe we go to the 50%. Regardless, we've got a complete reset of the shakeout here. So a turnaround, fine. It'll probably end up buying back on a turnaround. That often happens. Sometimes it's usually pretty close to the exit point or maybe a little higher. But at least it's a protection because you don't know. That could continue all the way down. This kind of a breakdown. It could just cascade lower. So defensive, but it worked. And even from a 5K standpoint, it was pretty clear as well. So the 5K action, we had that nice run up. It was moving along, and then boom, there it is, DOC spread. Even if you were a little reluctant on the first breakdown of the red here, I think it's okay because at this point you took out this peak and you took out the low trough right there on that original signal. And even though you're above the plus 15, you might say, okay, well, no, I want to wait, or I want to look for price to be up at the higher levels, which I don't have an objection to, actually, because when you get close back to that ABM, though, it becomes much more interesting, and I look for any soft spots, and then sure enough, right about actually even an improved price at this particular point, where you get the crossover of green, the steel, orange, all of it happens right there, and pretty close to the algo at the 2905. So from my standpoint, if you're not able to get up at the ABM yellow, then certainly right at that algo level, and sure enough, that led to the cascade. All the way lower, we ended up with some deep red right there. This actually produced a fairly reasonable signal at this first crossover point. The problem you had with this one is that the rise above the plus 13.5 is pretty quick, so you know this is probably going to be a short-lived run. So that's just one of those where I start to look for, when I break above zones, getting my stop up tight to those. And sure enough, hitting the 50, you're sort of like at that spot where, okay, now I'm looking for any kind of breakdown deal, because I didn't have a reset of the steel. So I know that this isn't going to survive. I didn't get that dip below the red through any of this. So it's an indication that, hey, any pops I get are opportunities to either add into my setup or wait until I'm near the lows before I cover, because trying to cover on the pop is not going to be a smart move, simply because I know that we're likely to fail. And sure enough, hits that point on the full DOC spread. It's right there, boom, takes it all the way back down to the lows, and maybe just kind of like sideways action through here. But again, finally did get a little bit of the reset right there, but as it crossed over and came across, it was doing fine, but then it cyan to the green split, and then it was just a matter of waiting for it to execute, and it just sort of went back and forth for a while. So all good stuff. Very happy to see it, and we'll just keep taking advantage of what the market gives us and not fight what we have. And that's going to be the key, particularly in the summer, because you're going to get gyrations that make no sense as far as whatever viewpoint fundamental. They're just going to be off of the power of algos looking for imbalances. And some of it will be at complete odds to logic, and that's fine. The logic is in the math for what they see from a value imbalance and their ability to capitalize on it. And that's really how it works. As always, though, trade well, and we'll put up any relevant charts on the Skype chat.